$1 million within 10 years. That sounds impossible, but I believe with the right blueprint, we can figure out exactly what steps we need to take to get there. So let's put together this roadmap to get to $1 million within 10 years. And the first principle that I want to share with you guys is that you need to really save aggressively. This is going to be a tough pill to swallow for you guys out there, but if you are on a goal to get to $1 million within 10 years, you're going to have to suck it up and actually make some sacrifices when it comes to spending money. Not only do you have to know exactly how much money you are spending, you also have to cut back on the categories in which you think you are spending too much. It also takes a lot of discipline to pass on certain events and entertainment opportunities that you might otherwise go to in the pursuit of this long-term goal. This also means that if you get a promotion or a raise at work, that you're not inflating your lifestyle instantly. Perhaps you're living at home a little bit longer to save money, and you're probably optimizing every single dollar that you are getting. That means if you have excess savings, for example, like let's say you have some cash that's just lying around sitting at a big bank paying you little interest, that's not really optimizing your dollar, and so instead you can move it to a high yield savings account. Make sure you're being paid some interest on your excess savings. So right now, high yield savings accounts are paying between 4 to 4.3%, and they might even go up further. The one bank that we've partnered with on this channel is SoFi, and they have high yield savings accounts with really competitive rates. I will leave a link down below if you're interested in them. Now, to a certain extent, it doesn't really matter how much money you make, but rather how much money you save. So let me illustrate this even further with a friend of mine, because he makes over $700,000 a year. That's a mind-blowing amount of money. But guess what? I think he spends probably $650,000 to $680,000 of that $700,000 salary every single year. He's spending money left and right like it's water, and we all probably have a friend that kind of fits this description. So I wanted to ask you guys, does making $700K a year even matter if you're saving only $20K of it? Because you could probably do the same thing, save $20K, even on a much lower salary like $60K or $80K a year. What really matters is that you have a high effective savings rate, and that's the first principle of saving aggressively. Next, let's talk about income. So say you're in a 9-to-5 right now that doesn't really pay you a ton of money. Realistically, it's unlikely that you're gonna get to $1 million in your 9-to-5 unless your 9-to-5 is a really high salary paying job, like if you're a lawyer or a doctor, or if you're at a startup for some reason and you have some equity in that startup and it's going to realize into a big payout later on. So while you should still look for opportunities within your main line of work, we should really be looking at pursuing some other opportunities outside of work that could get us there faster. If you start your own side hustle or your own business outside of work, there's so much more maneuverability that comes with that, because all of a sudden you're in control of your own destiny and you're not relying on your employer. Oftentimes, if you're in a 9-to-5 job, there's a cap on how much you can earn extra every single year. You usually get a 5 to 10% raise, and you're still dependent on your employer. Now, in the opportunities outside of work, basically your pay is going to be directly correlated to your effort and the results that you can get. I think salaries are really great for having a stable income, but oftentimes the reward structure just isn't there. So let's say you worked your ass off for a single year for your employer. If they don't notice that you're putting in extra effort, you're just gonna be paid the same. It's not like you see any additional upside on your income unless your boss notices that you're working a lot more. So by focusing on additional streams of income, we're going to be able to start accumulating that wealth. And maybe we can't invest $5,400 a month like in our math example, but we can start with $200 or $500 or $1,000 per month. As you experiment, learn more skills, and stay disciplined, there's going to be just more opportunities that come your way. Now, a key concept here is the disconnection of your time and your compensation. So let's actually listen to Naval Ravikant on what he has to say here.
The first thing, if you're going to make money, is that you're not going to get rich renting out your time. Even lawyers and doctors who are charging $300, $400, $500 an hour, they're not getting rich because their lifestyle is slowly ramping up along with their income, and they're not saving enough. They just don't have that ability to retire.
All right, so there is a lot of truth to what he just said. Renting out your time is not going to be the best use of your potential. I'd actually argue that if you are in one of those high-paying jobs like Naval is talking about, you can actually get rich. You just can't have your lifestyle ramp up too quickly. Now, let's pretend we aren't doctors or lawyers or someone with a really high-paying gross hourly wage. How else can we get there? Well, there are some career choices that we can make to get there instead. So these are some examples example jobs that are not dependent on time that can lead to higher income. For example, number one, realtors. They make commissions on real estate, so the more expensive of homes that they sell, the more of a percentage that they take home. Software sales. So these are often salaried positions, especially at a big tech company. You're still going to get paid a salary, but if you hit your sales goals, you're actually going to get large bonuses, and oftentimes your total compensation can be $200,000 to $300,000 per year. You could become a logo designer, so depending on your client, you can charge different rates by project for your logos. And so when you're charging by project and not by the hour, therefore your time is not directly correlated to your compensation. Similarly, a novelist is kind of like the same thing. If you're a writer and you produce a book, a lot of your pay is going to be dependent on royalties. The more someone buys your book, the more that you get paid. So this is pretty similar to someone who creates an online course or even perhaps a musician. The last is e-commerce store owner. The more products that you sell, the more that you actually earn. And so at this point, you're probably an entrepreneur, but the idea with these 5 jobs that I've just listed is that they don't have a direct correlation between time and how much money they can make. All right, so after you start piecing together that income, or maybe let's say your 9-to-5 job is paying you a high enough salary, we need to figure out what to do with that money to invest it and also appreciate that money into a bigger amount. I think that when you're young, you want to be taking on as much risk as you possibly can to try to grow that money as quickly as you can. Conventional wisdom will say that index funds are good because they average 8 to 10% per year historically, but I think that if you wanted to take a bigger swing, you could go for some growth stocks or individual names, especially in a tax advantage account like the Roth IRA, where the gains are tax-free. If you are buying ETFs and index funds to try to go for that 8 to 10% average return per year, consider FXIAX, that's the Fidelity S&P 500 index fund. Vanguard also has one, which I believe is VFIAX. And then with the ETFs, VOO or SPY are good. Another concept is to pick up appreciating assets whenever you can. So for example, real estate. Oftentimes, if you're able to scoop up real estate, you can use the power of leverage to kind of maximize and optimize your returns. So let me give you guys an example. Pretend at some point in your wealth building journey that you have $50,000 invested, but you don't really think it's growing fast enough. You see a property listed for $250,000 on the market. And so if you bought that property with 20% down, you would spend that $50,000. If the property appreciates or goes up in value by 5% at the end of year 1, the property would be worth $262,500. Effectively, this means that you had a $12,500 unrealized gain on a $50,000 investment. Your return on investment in this case is 25% due to the power of leverage. Even though the home only appreciated by 5%, your return was 5 times that because of the down payment you put on the house and the loan that you took on. Of course, this is just the best case scenario. If you are getting into cash flowing assets or other types of appreciating assets, you want to make sure you do your homework because I'm just simply illustrating how it would work. Now, I did want to share with you guys that one way to keep yourself accountable when it comes to growing your net worth is to track it. Okay, so this is my net worth tracker. And as you can see in this top box right here in green, these are all the assets that we might have. And so I have listed all the accounts that you might put. You can obviously add any other account that you want here or just add any rows, but basically, you want to keep track of what your balances are for every single one of these accounts for every increment of time that you choose. I've personally chosen to do every half year. So H2 is the second half of 2020. H1 is first half of 2021, so on and so forth. And right now we're in the first half of 2023. You can see that my total assets in column H, this is just an example by the way, is $891,408. And then in this box where it's yellow, these are the liabilities. These are the money or the debts that you might owe. So as you can see, we still owe quite a bit of money on our mortgage. We have an auto loan and student loans, which we have been paying down, but our total liabilities are negative $373,500. This row right here, row 30, just sums up or basically adds assets minus liabilities. So that's basically what row 30 does. It takes your assets and subtracts your liabilities. And as you can see, our net worth has been steadily growing in this hypothetical example quite quickly. And then if you just scroll down, this graph is automatically populated by the tables above. So as long as you're filling out your account balances and your liabilities every single half year or quarter or monthly or however you want to do it. It'll automatically calculate it, and you can use this tracker for free. So by tracking your progress to $1 million within 10 years, that's going to be way more attainable than if you don't track it at all, because half the battle is knowing exactly where you stand. I talked to Yuri Sagalov, the co-founder and managing partner at Wayfinder Ventures, a VC firm based in the San Francisco Bay Area, on the most common methods of becoming a billionaire.
So I think that like the most common method to becoming wealthy is equity. It's investments. It's not a salary, right? Like you can earn an income by being an employee at a company and just earning an hourly wage. But I think that if you look at every single person that's become wealthy, it's by being an owner in a company.
So the traditional method involves a lot of equity through companies, and most people think of tech companies. But if you're a celebrity, is it still possible to become a billionaire?
There's certainly celebrities or influencers who become billionaire. Like Kylie Jenner is a self-made billionaire completely on the back of her cosmetics line. Right. That is exceptionally, like that is almost exclusively where she made money on. I don't know how you think of the Kardashians. The Kardashians, I think today would be YouTubers or TikTokers if they started from nothing. You know? So I think that if you look at both Kim and Kylie, both of them became billionaires off of the brands that they built on the back of their followers.
I asked Yuri about this exact scenario and how much equity can a typical founder expect after different rounds of financing, and here's what he had to say.
I think historically you could essentially assume that it would be like 20% dilution for every round of financing. Your Series A would be like 20% dilution, and it's kind of like multiplied, right?
So if a founder started with like 50-50 with their partner, and they raised one round, they will probably own like 40% after that round each. So according to Yuri, there's a 20% dilution for every round of financing. So if Logan and KSI both started at 50-50 in equity and they raised one round, they should both own 40% after dilution. After the next round of financing, that would be 32%, then 25.6%, then 20.48%. There was a survey done on 100 multimillionaires a few years back, and the first thing that I noticed about them from this survey was that these multimillionaires are often living within their means and saving a lot of their income. You'll see that of the survey, the average household income was $250K a year on average, and their annual spending was around $90K a year. Also, just a side note, almost half of them had a side income of some sort, with real estate being a top choice, so that definitely reinforces our earlier point of having more sources of income that aren't active sources of income. Anyway, back to the saving. This income difference of $250K earned versus $90K spend means that the average millionaire from this survey was only spending 30% of their income a year, or had a savings rate of 64%, which I thought was a little bit high. So I found another study by Fidelity that said most self-made millionaires had 1/3 of their income devoted to savings. Now, I probably think this is a more realistic number. Either way, this shows you that even though millionaires make a higher than average income, their costs are staying relatively low, and it doesn't seem like they're a victim of lifestyle inflation. And this should make sense, right? So lifestyle inflation occurs because as we make more money, we think that buying more goods and services are gonna bring us more joy and happiness. We're always wanting to level up our lives. Now, unfortunately, what actually happens is that sure, we might get some dopamine from buying something new and shiny, but eventually that effect wears off. Buying new things doesn't necessarily increase satisfaction and happiness in life for the long term. So as your income increases, obviously we want to spend money on some nice things here and there, but to prevent lifestyle inflation, we need to make consistent choices that aren't going to hurt us long term, but actually benefit us instead. By saving a large percentage of your income, you have more options with those savings, including investing it, or just have the luxury of having cash sitting on the sidelines for big opportunities that could produce a much larger return in the long run. Investing is one of the quickest ways to build your wealth because of the principle of compound interest. Now, what's super interesting is that millionaires aren't that different from normal everyday people. Literally, you can become a millionaire just by being disciplined, saving a percentage of your paycheck, and investing. You don't even have to know that much about investing to do it properly. The important part here is that you get your money working for you instead of having a huge cash pile sit in your savings account earning basically no interest. So in this study by Fidelity, it was found that there's a huge likelihood that self-made millionaires will invest in stocks, and on average, millionaires held around 5 financial products, which came from a list including stocks, ETFs, CDs, mutual funds, bonds, real estate, etc. Now, a very easy beginner method you can do today to become wealthy over time is by consistently investing in low-cost index funds or ETFs. If you're familiar with the channel at all, you know that we often cover these investing topics, and index funds are simply just all-in-one products that allow you to invest in many different companies for just one purchase at a relatively low cost. So by making that one purchase consistently over time, you'll at least match those market returns, which should compound your wealth without having to think too much about it. Now, having 100K can be quite life-changing, but getting there is a whole nother story. So according to Charlie Munger, which is Warren Buffett's right-hand man with a net worth of over $2.3 billion, quote, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit." So let's actually break this down. The quote hints at the fact that we need to save and be frugal in order to reach 100K as quickly as possible. He literally says to walk everywhere and not eat anything. Notice how he doesn't say invest in gold or YOLO into GameStop stock. And this is what's fascinating, because contrary to what people typically believe, the first 100K is not usually derived from investment returns, rather it's derived from savings. Take a look at this calculator from the 4-Pillar Freedom blog. I'm gonna link this blog in the description below, by the way. If you save $15,000 a year for 6 years and you're able to attain a modest 4.5% return on your savings, you would be at $105,000 after 6 years. But 85% of that would be comprised of savings and 15% of interest. In another example, let's say you save a lot less, 10K a year, but you average a 10% return. It's still gonna take you 7 years, and at this phenomenal 10% rate, savings still compose 67% of your total $104,000 in this case. The point is that getting your first 100K is rarely from investment gains. Instead, it's quite the opposite. It's all about saving, being smart with your money, and earning more money all in tandem. That's why the Charlie Munger quote really applies here. You need to amass 100K by any means necessary. Now, the beauty is that once you get to 100K, the next 100K is so much easier to make, and it's gonna come a lot faster. Pretend you save $12,000 a year or $1,000 a month, and you're able to get 8% in the market. Your first 100K will take you 6.25 years. Your next 100K, assuming you keep investing and saving that $12,000 a year, would only take you 4.25 years. That's 2 years faster because of the compounding effect of the $100,000 that you had already. Okay, so if I wanted to make $100,000 in this year, I would break down this number into a more digestible manner. 100K in a year is $273.97 in a day. Now, if we only count business days, there are 260 business days in a typical year, so that comes out to $384 a day. This would be my target. I want to make between $380 to $400 every single working day. Now, assuming I work 40-hour weeks, that's an hourly wage of $48 an hour, and if you want to work 60-hour weeks, that's an average wage of $32 an hour. Okay, so is this actually possible within a year? I would say statistically, no, it is not. However, I'm still going to be trying for it because there are definitely people out there making 100K in their first year. So you need to have this mindset, which is like, why can't it be me? Because other people are doing it too. So let's talk about how I would go about getting $380 a day or $48 an hour. If you wanted to make $380 a day, we need to talk about the concept of being irreplaceable. The more irreplaceable you are, the more money that you are going to make. So it's a huge reason why these super athletes, for example, Steph Curry, he's my favorite NBA player of all time. He signed a $215 million contract in the NBA in 2017. Now, why is this? Is because you could argue that he is irreplaceable. Who else is going to be shooting 3-pointers from half court? Certainly not me. So Steph Curry is a huge asset to any NBA team, and that's a reason why he's able to sign a supermax contract. Now, he drives value to the Golden State Warriors, which have been valued at $7 billion, the most valuable team in the NBA. Now, contrast Steph Curry to somebody in the stadium, maybe selling concessions throughout different sections. You don't really need to have an irreplaceable skill to sell concessions. This is an extreme example, but there are thousands of people that are able to sell popcorn and drinks throughout the stadium versus there is only one Steph Curry. In the eyes of the market and the economy, this person will just not naturally make as much money because that skill can be replaced. So in this way, we need to play to our strengths. What are our skills? What are our natural natural advantages. Whether we know it or not, we all have advantages in something in our life. So if you think among yourself, among your friends and your family, there's gonna be things that you are naturally good at that they are not good at. That is simply because you've spent more time doing those things than other people have. So if I were to take myself, for example, I think I'm good in 4 different things at this point in my career. Number 1 is gaming companies, because I used to monetize one of the top grossing games in the United States. Number 2 would be e-commerce, since I've started my own e-commerce poster store before. Number 3 would be financial advisory and just finance in general, because I used to be a financial advisor. And number 4 would be social media, because I have been able to show that I was able to grow this YouTube channel as well as a TikTok and Instagram. And does this mean that I'm the single greatest person at any of these 4 skills? Probably not. However, I do know more than the average person does about, let's say, YouTube or TikTok. And because of that, I could probably go out and charge a consulting fee of $100 or $200 an hour just for the knowledge that I have. Could I charge people for my basketball skills? I would argue no. I've played less than 20 hours of basketball in my life probably, and a 5th grader would not even pay me for that. Now, if you're watching this, what you can do is take out a piece of paper and a pen and just seriously just pause the video and just write down a few things that you're good at. Just write down as many things as you can. For example, if you know a lot about building muscle, working out, creating workout programs, you could figure out a way to monetize that skill. So one way would be to do one-on-one personal training with people. You could become an affiliate of fitness-related products like supplements and clothing products. You could start a website teaching people about all your different coaching programs. You could even start a private Facebook group where you have a community of like-minded people that are into fitness that could eventually check out your website and perhaps some of your affiliate links. It all starts with knowing what you are good at. Now, if you are watching this and you're like, man, Humphrey, I'm just not good at anything. Like, what should I do in that case? First of all, I doubt that is true. However, this is where I would spend the next year or 2 trying to build up a high income skill that I could then trade in the market for a higher hourly wage. There's so many skills and jobs out there that I know that if I learned the skills, I could probably make more than $50 an hour, even doing them from home. I could become a graphic designer and help people with their logos and branding. I could become a videographer. I could do content copywriting. I could be an online writer. I could be a social media marketing manager, a web designer, etc. You want to start small with these skills, build on them every single day consistently over time, and then start to scale these skills into perhaps a bigger business. All right, so once you've figured out how to be more irreplaceable and also increasing more of your income, that's where we need to worry about the other side of the equation, which is costs. This is where I would probably be as frugal as possible until I hit my first $100,000. So the dictionary definition of frugal is to be careful about spending money or using things when you do not need to. We want to make sure that we're going to get the most value out of our dollars here. So in the beginning, frugality matters even more than a little bit later on. So I would say if you are on the beginning of your journey to 100K, the more frugal you are, the more you will benefit. Every single small financial decision matters. So here's a recent example that my friend thought that I was crazy for. So I have the McDonald's app on my phone. I can get an iced coffee from McDonald's for 99 cents using the app with their daily deal. Now the normal price is $2.29. So yes, I am saving $1.29, which doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it's a microcosm for all of the other financial behaviors that are going on in my life. I'm always trying to get the best possible deal that I can, and that behavior is likely going to translate further on down the line, and that's how you're actually going to amass that 100K. And that's probably why you see super rich people still being as frugal as they can, is because that's how they got there in the first place, and they really just haven't changed their behavior. Now, does this mean that I am cheap or that you need to be cheap in order to reach your goals? I would argue no. You can still be generous and giving with other people. That's where I like to spend my money, on other people. But I can still be frugal with my own personal spending. So I want you to do this. Every time you're about to spend money, think about if there's a lower cost alternative to spending money that you could do. If you get a Starbucks every day, why don't you try making the coffee at home? If you like eating out every meal, perhaps you could switch it up and meal prep for a week or 2. Same thing with Uber. You can just take the bus or maybe walk instead. And my favorite, when you do go out for lunch, instead of getting the sandwich, the chips, and the drink, just get the sandwich only and drink some water at home. I swear this stuff will add up over time. It's usually these tiny lifestyle changes that will start to help you amass that money. And once you start checking your bank account every day and you see that number go up, it's gonna be incredibly gratifying. So once you've started to do all these steps, all you have to do is repeat this process over and over again. I know it's boring, but then maybe sprinkle in some investing in there and then see your money grow as quickly as possible. At that point, if you wanna do what Charlie Munger says and eat ease off the gas pedal a little bit, I think that's a good idea. All right, there are 4 main factors that the Chinese prioritize to help them save a lot of money that I want to tell you about. All right, so the first of the 4 main factors that the Chinese do to help them save money is that they don't indulge in luxury goods or goods that are just there as status symbols. The majority of Chinese people want to stay humble, and they also want to fly under the radar, so they usually stay away from these luxury products. Number 2, when the Chinese earn money, they usually like to live off a very small percentage of their income. Now, my dad grew up with very little money as a child in Shanghai. There were some days that he could not even afford food and he would go to sleep hungry. When he was able to afford food, all he could really buy at the time was a plain pastry called a mantou. And a mantou is a tasteless kind of white bun that you can buy for very cheap. Because of this tough childhood, when my dad started his career, whenever he earned, let's say $10, he tried to live off of $1 single dollar. Now, in reality, was he able to live off of $1 for every $10 that he earned? Not really. There were going to be times that he had to spend 6, 7, 8, or 9 out of those $10 just to make ends meet. For him though, saving money wasn't a way to build wealth. It was actually a way to ensure that he never had to sleep hungry again. So this simple principle of trying to save as much money as you can and live off of little as possible really stuck with me, and it's one of the main factors that I think many other Chinese people adopt as well. Now, this is a good rule if you're trying to build wealth, but please understand that this type of rule will create what's called a scarcity mindset about money, and so you kind of have to acknowledge that psychologically, that as you earn more money, you can kind of switch your mindset into more of an abundance mindset later on. The third factor that the Chinese employ to save a lot of money is that they really focus on their needs versus their wants. So another wise lesson from them is that if you need something and you have to actually spend money on something you need, then go ahead and spend money, especially if it pertains to your health. So if you're debating between a flimsy desk chair or an ergonomic chair that might be able to make you more comfortable and stay healthier throughout the day, you might want to opt for that ergonomic chair. I would classify the ergonomic chair as a need within reason. Of course, you don't want to take this logic to the most extreme. For example, everyone needs clothes, but that doesn't mean you need to go buy Gucci clothes just because they are better because it's a need. So here, the idea is to be reasonable with your spending and make smart choices and save where you can. Now, when it comes to wants, you can still buy something that you want, but make sure that you're gonna get really good value out of that. So what do I mean by that? Let's say you buy a $350 fancy wallet. Like, let's say you just really wanted this. Well, you want to make sure that you can use that wallet for a very long time so that it amortizes the cost of your use. Could you use that wallet for 5 years? Then that means you would take that $350 and spread it out over 5 years of usage. That comes out to less than 20 cents a day. Spending money is inevitable. Everybody will have to spend money at some point, but the lesson here is to be reasonable and frugal with most of your decisions. The last factor here is that if you're trying to save money very quickly, the Chinese would advise you to stay at home and eat at home. I think this one is pretty universal to most cultures. We know that by eating out, we're spending a lot more money on food than we need to. And in my household, I remember growing up and we would maybe go out to eat once every other week. Usually having people over to have a group dinner was more of a commonplace. And so that was our way of socializing as a family growing up. And the eating out was just mostly saved for special occasions.